Let's Connect Greater Portland, a show about the issues we face in Greater Portland and the movers and shakers leading the way. I'm Tom Bell. Today we're talking about the importance of citizens having a shared understanding of the facts so democracy can work. We're here with Jessica Grondin, Director of Communications for the City of Portland, Shara Dee, Communications Officer for the City of South Portland, and Allison Carrier, Marketing and Communications Manager for the Town of Scarborough. If you have questions for our guests, you can call in at 780-4909. That's 780-4909. Shara, Jessica, Allison, thank you so much for being here and taking the time. Let's start with some questions here about introducing you folks. Allison, how long have you been with the Town of Scarborough?
I've been with the town for 3 years now. It's a new position that they created, so back in 2020.
Why was your position created?
So in the 2020 fiscal year budget, they put a new position for it. Each department was kind of doing their own communications at the time, and they found that there was more complexity as the communications channels were evolving from print to more digital, and they found that it would really be a good opportunity to streamline it into a more consistent position that was doing the role more broadly than individual departments.
And Jessica, you are the veteran here. How long have you been with the city?
Yeah, in March it'll be 10 years, so it's been a long time.
And Shara, how long have you been with South Portland?
I am the newbie here. I've been with South Portland for a little over a year now, and it's also a brand new position. I'm really grateful to Jessica for kind of taking me under her wing and teaching me a lot because I'm also new to municipal government. And we have a very similar story to Scarborough about why the position was created. Departments were doing the communications on their own, and city leadership was just looking to sort of centralize things and really improve the flow of information from city government to the public.
And what were you doing before taking this job?
I had been in the nonprofit world. I worked for arts organizations, education organizations, always doing communications work. Both of my degrees are in communication, and it's been a passion of mine. Most recently, before coming to the city, I was the managing director of a theater out in Oxford Hills, based in physical comedy. They really focused on clowning and miming and acrobatics, so very different work, but the skills definitely transfer over to the city work.
Tell me about the challenges of the job.
There are lots of challenges. I'm sure we can all split these up. One thing that I have a tricky time with is I'm a one-woman shop, and there's just so much going on in South Portland. The city is working on so many different things, so it can be a challenge to really spotlight all of the things that deserve to be spotlighted and sort of not even mentioning the competition that we have with other people and organizations on social media, but really even competing with our own news sometimes. So that can be a real challenge.
I'll chime into that. Sometimes I want to dive deeper on a certain topic, and it can be so hard because there is so much information to share out. And it just kind of can get frustrating when you want to pass out so much information and people feel like they don't hear it, but it's because there's so much, and we have to hit all of these channels. But it's just ever changing.
Indeed, like much of the dysfunction we see today on the national scene is due to the lack of agreement over facts. In one poll, for example, nearly a third of Americans believe that Joe Biden's victory in 2020 was the result of voter fraud, even though there's no evidence of that belief. And we see it in our local government, where the decline of local newspapers means fewer reporters covering local government. The result, an information vacuum, right? And that's a perfect environment for bad actors to use social media to spread disinformation and conspiracy theories. I mean, this is really why you're in these jobs, is to help establish a common understanding of facts.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, for cities to tell their stories because we are the ones that are the most close to our residents, right? So the federal government, most people don't see the impact that they have on their daily lives, but they definitely see it at the local government level, right? We're picking up their trash. They're coming to us for registering their car. So there's lots of reasons why they would come into City Hall or need to access our services. And I think that it's important for them to understand everything that we're doing. And it's really on us to tell those stories because there isn't as many reporters now, right? So in order for people to get information, we need to figure out all the ways to reach them, whether it's an e-newsletter or social media. And if you're not telling your story, someone else is going to tell it for you, and it's probably not going to be correct.
There's also so much happening behind the scenes before a news story even picks up to be newsworthy. Like, we have boards and committees working on issues that most people don't even know about unless you're tuning into the meetings. And so it's our jobs to take that kind of micro or smaller pieces of information, know it's going to pick up and escalate, and be able to share that out so it's not a surprise when it does become a news story.
So, Jessica, how long have you been with the city again?
Almost 10 years.
10 years. Now,
Yeah.
in that 10-year period, have you noticed trends or changes in press coverage, the number of reporters coming to meetings, or people in the media with City Hall, covering City Hall?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Portland's obviously the largest city, so we do have a dedicated City Hall bureau reporter. But there's definitely less weekly coverage in weekly papers, and just less coverage overall because the papers themselves have been shrunk, right? So there's not as much room to put all those stories out. So that's why we've had to pick up the slack and do e-newsletters and add to our social media and just try to reach as many people as possible. I get sometimes emails from residents who will say, well, why wasn't there a story about this in the paper? And I'm like, well, I can't control what gets in the paper, right? But I can control what is put out via the channels that we use. And so I'm always trying to encourage people to sign up for our news so that they can stay in touch and know what's going on.
And Shara, even in South Portland, even in your short time you've been there, there's been changes in coverage, right?
Sure. We've certainly seen turnover in reporters. And, many times with our local paper, for example, we have a new person covering South Portland who's great. I had a Zoom call with her yesterday to make sure that she's getting the information she needs from us and how we might be able to improve to make sure she knows what's going on in the city for ideas of stories to cover. But sure, and that, it's always tricky when you have turnover, new folks starting and writing. So it can sometimes feel like a little bit of a training process too, even though I'm also new myself. So we're working together to sort of come up to speed. But I've also learned a lot. There are a couple of reporters who have taught me how they do things and about their deadlines and how, what press releases should look like so that they get the information out, that they see it and get it out. So, yeah. I
think the Press Herald used to have a reporter whose beat was South Portland. That's no longer the case.
Kelly Bouchard?
Yes.
I just heard from her the other day, and I've wondered where she's been, but I didn't know that switch had taken place.
Yeah, she's on Enterprise Business beat now, and I think they've kind of consolidated some of their surrounding Portland coverage.
Well, Hi, Kelly. We miss you.
So when newspapers no longer cover local government, right, that has a big impact on how local government functions.
Yeah, well, like Allison said, they're only picking it up at the point in which it becomes a big story or you're at the vote. And it's important for residents to know that these projects and planning processes have been happening for months or years, even leading up to that. And what we're trying to avoid is people coming to the vote or the public hearing and saying, this is the first I've heard about this, right? So that's why I think all these tools that we now can use are so much better to get people involved. And I think especially post-pandemic, people are tuning in more. They are, excited about remote participation or ways that they can participate without having to maybe come in person to the public hearing.
But is there a fine line when you're essentially a government news agency, right, distributing news to the public? Isn't there a line that you have to be careful of crossing? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to make sure that it's factual and, down the middle, not with any opinion, right? So you're presenting either the information on how your elected officials voted, or you're presenting, the facts leading up to it with how the staff have, come to have their opinion, or the planning and all the background information that's led up to that point.
Allison, I think Scarborough has a newsletter that goes out to residents, and a lot of people in town subscribe to that. Tell me about that newsletter. Yeah,
so the newsletter was around before I started back in 2020, so I think it was probably started around like 2013 even to 2015 timeframe. It had a good number of subscribers. It was well used, well made, sent every twice a month. So we've just been able to maintain that consistency. And now that my role is in place and able to streamline communications from all departments, it's really developed into a source that we are advocating people to sign up for. Go there, same with what Jessica was saying, go there as your main source of information so you're not just relying on what you see in the paper. So our subscriber base has more than doubled in the past 3 years, and it's really a testament to that consistency and being able to redirect people there. And another point I want to add too is just not only making information available, but kind of the repetition of using the newsletter, and you don't just put it in one newsletter and then never talk about it again. You kind of have to put it in the next few newsletters, make sure that people see it and don't miss that opportunity.
So how many people subscribe?
We have over 4,000, and we know that there is still opportunity to grow. I mean, I'm seeing the numbers climbing week after week, even now, and that tells me that people do trust it and use it as a news source. Our open rate hasn't changed in the past 3 years, even despite growing our numbers, and just that there's more opportunity. There's people coming to move to Scarborough every month, so it's a good place where we can keep that trajectory going up.
I'd like to add to what you said, too. So it's not only about repeating the information in the newsletter many times, but then it's also about putting it on Facebook and changing it up and putting it on Instagram and, all of the different channels that you have. We have a communications survey out right now to try to find out from residents and businesses in the community what they're looking to hear from South Portland, the city of South Portland, and the ways they want to find that information and get that information. And it is completely across the board. I looked at the survey just yesterday, and it's, Facebook, Instagram, newsletter, website, yes, all of it. And there's no clear front runner. So we also do invest a lot of time in our newsletter because that is the one place where it's like everything that's going on that's important is going to be in that newsletter. And we put quite a bit of resources. So, and there's less to compete against. I mean, inboxes are crazy these days too, but it's less than Facebook where there's an algorithm and you never know exactly what people are going to see.
But we were talking about how there's so much information to put out. So the newsletter, I don't want it to get too long that people kind of just breeze by it. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to get people back to the website. The newsletter is to redirect to the website where you can access all of the materials and meeting minutes. We're not able to put everything in the newsletter. So it's just another avenue towards getting the full information if you want to go looking for it on the website.
I think over time, the algorithms for social media have changed, so it's much harder for nonprofits, municipal governments to get much traction on social media. It's really they really want us to pay money for advertising, so they're not going to give away those eyeballs for free. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, and I think it matters like what you're putting with it too, right? Like if you've got to have a great photo to go along with it in order to capture people because they're probably not going to pay attention to it otherwise. So. And then you have to know which audience is on which channel, right? So it's pretty telling when you look at a post what segment of your population is on Facebook versus Instagram. And so, catering those messages, knowing that who's on which channel is pretty important as well.
And it's part of our jobs to evolve with the times, see what the trends are, and kind of lean into that. And I'm hesitant to say this, but Reels, like on Instagram, Reels is where that's what keeps coming up on my feed, and that's something that I know that we have more potential to get creative with how we put out our content and kind of use that across platforms. So that's something we have noticed when we put out videos of the counselors giving a little reminder about an upcoming meeting or quick little videos like that. It gets more response than just the generic post with the text on it.
I've noticed Twitter seems to be less and less effective for us, and it's kind of like become kind of a poisonous kind of platform. And I'm wondering maybe we should just delete our Twitter account, just stop posting there. Have you guys thought about that?
I went to the 3CMA. It's a government communications professional organization. I went to their conference in September, and that was the trend that many either already communities have ditched their Twitter or are planning to ditch it. We tend to use it mainly for important alerts. If there's a snowstorm and City Hall is going to be closed, that kind of thing, because there are reporters who tend to look there for news. But otherwise, we have kind of naturally, since I've taken over anyway, focused more on other platforms where we're seeing growth.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we're still posting to it, but I think the engagement level there is quite low and probably still only seen by media at this point. So we're not going to put all of our efforts in there. It's much higher on Instagram for us.
How about LinkedIn? Do anything there?
Mostly recruitment stuff for us, so job postings and just internal culture, that kind of stuff, to be able to recruit and help retain people, but not as much in terms of other city news.
So I want to remind people you're listening to Let's Connect Greater Portland, a show about the issues we face in Greater Portland and the movers and shakers leading the way. I'm Tom Bell. Today we're talking about the importance of citizens having a shared understanding of the facts so democracy can work. We're here with Jessica Grondin, Director of Communications for the City of Portland, Shara Dee, Communications Officer for the City of South Portland, and Allison Carrier, Marketing and Communications Manager for the Town of Scarborough. If you have questions for our guests, you can call in at 780-4909, 780-4909.
I kiss my girl by the factory wall. Dirty old town, dirty old town. Clouds are drifting across the moon. Cats are prowling on their beat. Springs a girl from the streets at night. Dirty old town, dirty old town. I heard a siren from the docks.
Hello, you're back again. I'm Tom Bell. Let's Connect Greater Portland. Today we're talking about the importance of citizens having a shared understanding of the facts so democracy can work. I'm here with Jessica Grondin, Director of Communications for the City of Portland, Shara Dee, Communications Officer for the City of South Portland, and Allison Carrier, Marketing and Communications Manager for the Town of Scarborough. If you have questions for our guests, please call us in at 780-4909, 780-4909. Let's talk a bit about websites. This is all under your purview as communications staffers for your towns. What's the latest going on with you, Allison?
So we had an upgrade to our website right around when I started, and it still was found that there was search functionality was off. There were still just some changes that residents weren't super happy about, and so we went through a more thorough process of upgrading our website. It took a bit of time, but we're really happy with where it is now, and it's been live for about a year now, a little bit longer. And with that, we've had a lot more opportunity to improve our search functionality, add more pages that are relevant to people. A big project of mine has been to create a What's Happening page. It's called a projects page, but it's more than, it's just kind of like ongoing construction projects or other ongoing topics. So we've created a What's Happening page that within that you can click onto each of those ongoing topics and learn way more about it, go into detail, and that never existed before. So it's just an exciting opportunity to kind of create more awareness and information and making it accessible for our residents who want to go dive deeper.
Shara, I heard you're overhauling the website in South Portland.
We are, and I'm very, very excited about it. It is a long process, and it's a difficult process because there's a lot of material on our website, which I think is probably true for every government site out there. So we just finished the phase of going through the current website and deciding what's going to migrate over. And now we're going to be working on making sure that the content is complete and up to date and making changes to the design features, which it's going to be really beautiful. So I'm excited to get that out there. In addition to being beautiful, it's just going to be so helpful to residents and businesses trying to get information, because unlike Allison's newsletter, where it points back to the website and everybody's going to the website for the information, our newsletter right now really is the container for most information. And that newsletter goes on our website, but it's kind of hard to find. And with this revamp, everything's going to be right in front of folks, and they really won't have to go digging for the most important and up-to-date news.
Yeah, I think I would just jump in and say that government websites are a beast, right? There's so much information that you have to contain there for your residents or businesses. And not everybody is going there for everything, right? Most people are going for one or two things. And especially it's different if you are a business owner or a resident. And so it's a hard job to prioritize where you put things and make it easy to find things. And so especially I think, again, post-pandemic, so many people have been, our numbers were through the roof in terms of people trying to access our website and find critical information. And so now that you have that many more eyeballs on your website, I think it's really important to make sure that it's as easily accessible and, nice and easy for people to find things. So one of the things with ARPA money, we were able to upgrade our website platform, which was huge because it's not only, easier for people to find things, but it's easier on the staff end for us to keep things up to date.
My philosophy on websites is that they're not like magazines that people are going to peruse. Mm-hmm. They just want to go to the website, get the information they want as quickly as they can, and leave.
And leave, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So let's open this show up to you guys, your questions. I like to hear you ask each other some questions, or me a question, because we're all really in the same job, and we learn from each other.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say one thing. So, Tom, you're kind of the pioneer in terms of some government stuff for doing a podcast, right? I think we were talking earlier about we haven't had the time or the resources to hop in there, but can you tell us a little bit about how that's expanded your reach and helped GPCOG tell its story?
Yeah, it's an interesting collaboration between GPCOG and WMPG, two very different kinds of organizations, right? And what the podcast does, and we make several products from the podcast. We have a YouTube channel. We broadcast on a local cable access TV, and we create a podcast that we can put in our newsletter and share it to people who follow our work. So so one thing that it has done, it has helped us as an agency meet face to face with leaders in our region, because we're able to invite them on the show and have conversations with them on a regular weekly schedule. Mm-hmm. And it also produces content, because we always need content for social media, for our newsletters, our website. So it produces content regularly for us, and really it's a lot of work. And but I think it's paying off, and taking the issues that we're interested in: land use, planning, transit, sustainability, municipal government, democracy, local government, how it works, how to make it better. These are all issues I think that a lot of people are interested in.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that one of the things we wanted to show at GPCOG is we are a region. We're not just individual municipalities, right? Mm. And so just echoing every week, we are part of Greater Portland, and we're going to celebrate the people in our region who are working to make it better.
Mm. I think sometimes it's easier for people to explain projects and processes too when you are talking it out, right? So sometimes the written content can be a little bit hard for people to truly grasp what they're doing and what's going into it. So, and podcasts, and I think just being able to listen is an easy way for people to digest news lately too, right? Because they can listen in the car, or they can listen while they're doing chores at home. So sometimes I think that's a better way to get people to know about things than just reading emails or newsletters.
Reaching a wider audience, and you're getting content that you can reuse and take little soundbite clips from, and stays relevant.
And we had a couple of planners from the city of Portland to talk about the recode process, right? And I think you put it in your newsletter.
Yep.
And I think that was the kind of podcast that the interest is fairly, the general public maybe not be interested in this, but there's a segment that's very interested in this issue, and we'll listen to that show.
Yeah. Well, and that's such a dense issue, right? That it's easier to hear from a planner talk about it. I think the hardest projects to communicate about are those kind of infrastructure projects or planning processes that have so much to it and they're so complex. So
I think we're getting a phone call. Are we getting a phone call, Josh?
Oh.
Okay. Caller, tell us who you are and what's your question?
Yes, hi. My name's Ethan, and I'm calling from Saco. I am concerned, and I don't mean to derail your conversation. I just wanted to chime in on the homeless situation, and this could be helpful for the other guests, not just the Portland representative, but because it could easily spill over. Now, I was in the year 2000. I was a community organizer for Lewiston for the Hispanic community up there, and just helping them get what they needed in interpreting and stuff like that.
We just got 5 minutes left, so let's get to your question a little quicker.
What's being done to track people to see who they are, to help them to know who they are, what they're doing, how they got there, and to help them. Otherwise, I think what you're going to end up seeing is more of the same. You know what I mean? So that's all. I'll hang up and listen off the radio. Thank you.
Well, we're off topic, but that is an important issue. But we don't really have anybody here that has that expertise to answer it. So, but really appreciate you calling in. One of the most interesting shows we've had at the podcast is we actually had one of the women living in the camps appear in the show. And it was very moving. She turned out to be very eloquent. It was unclear if she was going to make it on time to the show. She was walking into the driveway just as the show was on the air. Wow. Any other questions you have?
Just kind of a statement. Maybe it'll turn into a question. But when I started, because it was a new position, each department was so used to doing communications their own way, and not necessarily. Well, some departments were excited now to have a new person that they could pass along information to. Others are just in the same flow. So sometimes it can be hard to find out what is happening in each department if they're not necessarily coming to you with the information. And I was just wondering if either of you have experience with how you get information to tell a story that's not just like the obvious story, digging a little deeper.
I'll just say that the department heads and staff across the city are so excited to have me on board that I feel kind of like spoiled. And I also feel really just so lucky to get to do the work that I do, because there are a few positions in the city I feel like that really get to touch every single department. And I do, and I'm learning a ton about stormwater, street clearing in the wintertime, stuff that I really knew nothing about. So just personally, it's been really fun to learn something brand new. For us, it's really just a matter of having one person doing most of this work and organizing all of the information that's coming to me. I sort of put out a call. I know I talked to you, Jess, at the last conference we were at about trying to come up with a content schedule, and is that worth trying to do when so often I think we can all agree you can have a certain amount of structure and planning, but it switches so constantly that you almost don't want to put too much effort into it because it's going to change. So that's really what I'm working on right now, is figuring out what are the overall things we're going to be covering for the next couple weeks, year, and then working in flexibility.
Ray, Shara, and it's true, people I've heard from South Portland are excited that you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shara, Jessica, Allison, so much for being here and for taking the time. Also thanks to Joshua, our sound engineer, and WMPG, who collaborates with the Greater Portland Council of Governments in producing the show. You can reach us on Instagram at Let's Connect Radio. Join us next week for another conversation about the great work that's happening in our communities. Until then, be kind to yourself and to each other. I'm Tom Bell. See you next time on Let's Connect Greater Portland.